Good afternoon. We're here today to conduct an oral interview with Miss Mabel Easton of Orange County, Virginia. So, Miss Easton, if you could tell us when and where you were born.
I was born in Orange, Virginia, in an area called Marshall Heights on September 24th, 1930.
Okay,
That's a
and
long time ago.
truly it was. Can you tell me the names of your parents?
My parents,
Yes, ma'am.
Annie Johnson and Willie Fisher Smith Jr.
Okay, okay. And so in 1930, you were delivered by a doctor?
Mm, I I wouldn't know that, but I don't think so. I think I was delivered by my grandmother, Ophelia, and her mother, and or her mother, Sarah,
Mhm.
that we called Grandma.
Okay. And that's a perfect segue because one of the more important things is that, to the best of your recollection, can you describe your ancestors? Like you mentioned, your grandmother, Sarah. What can you tell us about Sarah?
Grandma Sarah was, well, she was old when I first met her. And the fact that she died when I was 9 years old, she had to be 100 when I was born. She had, for one thing, I remember she had beautiful white hair, and she was very soft spoken. And she used to let us do whatever we wanted to do. And she didn't try to correct us or anything. That's what I remember. But I know that she would live with Grandma Johnson for a while, and then she would go live with Aunt Janie for a while. But we all lived in the same little area. I don't know who. I think the people that Aunt Janie worked for were Samuels. At least they were in the area, but I'm not sure about that.
Hmm. And so,
But
Sarah, being your grandmother or your great grandmother, even, I would assume that at her age she was a slave.
she was still working.
But I mean, in her youth, she was born into slavery.
Yes, she was.
Hmm.
She, I know she was born into slavery. I don't know who the people were who owned her because she never talked about that. But she'd talk about other things uh, during slavery, and her brother also. I know the two of them were born into slavery.
Hmm. And you mentioned that they will talk about other aspects of that time and place. Can you describe that a little bit?
Well, let me see. There was Grandma, Grandma Johnson, Aunt Janie, Aunt Nellie. And what I remember most about Aunt Nellie was that they had amputated her legs. Um, and I really don't remember too much about any of the rest of them.
Hmm.
I know they had uh, two other sisters, but I can't remember who they were.
Lula and Mary Ella?
And, oh, Aunt Mary, but Aunt Mary didn't live with us at that time. Aunt Mary was in Pennsylvania,
Philadelphia, yes. Mhm.
and she didn't come to live with us until we had moved in the alley.
Mhm.
That's when I remember first seeing Aunt Mary.
Hmm. And so these other ladies, Lula, Mariella, Jane, and Ophelia, they were all sisters.
Yeah.
No boys. I noticed that there are no boys. You don't remember to talk of
I
any
don't
boys.
remember any boys.
Hmm. Hmm.
It, see, there had to be some men around somewhere.
Yes, yes.
But I don't remember them.
Mm. So you mentioned Uncle Alex, and is this Sarah's brother?
But yeah,
And can you describe him?
Uncle Alec was tall. I thought he was very good looking. From a child's point of view, evidently, I wasn't the only one who thought that he was good looking. Because as I understand it, he had three wives.
Three wives.
So, but I remember that he used to come and visit quite often, although he lived in D.C. He would he would come and spend a few hours and leave, and then he would come back, and he was okay. He was Uncle Alec.
Hmm. Grandmother's
And
brother.
yeah,
Great grandmother's brothers.
my great grandmother's brother.
Hmm.
But he was just Uncle Alec. We never put any significance on anything. He was just coming to visit. He was from out of town and he lived in Washington. We were excited about that.
Hmm.
So, and his son, Ralph, would come and he would come and stay for a little bit.
And so it looks like that Alex and Sarah were still close. They had other siblings, but it seems like those were the two who remained close over the course of time.
Those were the two that I remember mostly.
Hmm.
Of course, if my aunts were still here, my mother, they would know more about them. But I don't uh, I don't know too much about them now.
And so Sarah and Alex in Orange County, do you know before they made it to town where they hail from?
Know what?
Where they came from?
As far as I know, they lived in Nasons. I Other than that, no, I don't
Hmm.
know anything about if they lived anywhere other than Nasons. I don't know anything about that.
Hmm. Okay. And Nasons is in Orange County, Virginia.
Yeah.
Hmm. Okay. And so you never lived in Nasons, is that correct?
No,
Okay.
no, no, no.
Hmm.
Like when we left Marshall Heights, we moved to Church Street, and from Church Street we moved to the alley.
And you mentioned the alley. Um, I believe that the reference is Tin Cup Alley at the name of the
Tin
street.
Cup Alley, where it got its name, I have no idea, but I know that's all we used to hear, Tin Cup Alley. But you know, it was a pretty nice place to grow up. We had plenty of neighbors,
Hmm.
on both sides, on both sides of us.
Hmm.
Um, and coming down the alley from Church Street, there was one, two, three, four, five, about 6 or 7 houses just in that little space. and everybody knew everybody else. It was, hmm, I don't know, and there was one white family. His name was Suter.
Suitor.
Suter.
Did they have children?
They had one girl. Her
Mm-hmm.
name was Lucy.
Mm-hmm.
And Lucy had polio,
Okay.
and she wore a brace on her leg. And she was our playmate.
Mm.
There was uh, the families that lived in the alley. One, well, there were plenty of us, but we all lived in the same house at the time, you know.
When
And
you say we, meaning your cousins or Miss Johnson's other children?
uh, Grandma Johnson's children,
Mm-hmm.
like my mother and her family, her children, and Grandma's younger children.
Who were these
Oh,
people? Can you describe them, the people, um, by name?
there was Grandma's children. I think so. Gertrude, Selena,
Mm-hmm.
Marion, Fanny, Bunny. Those are Grandma's children.
Mm-hmm.
Maud didn't live with us. She and her husband, Uncle George, worked for the Marshall family. She was the cook, housekeeper. He was the butler and the chauffeur. And they lived with the Marshalls. Whether it was a separate house or what, I don't know. All I know is that they lived with the Marshalls. Um, and then Gertrude, she got married and she moved with the Walker family. She moved her husband's family up on Route 20.
Mm-hmm.
And so that left uh, my mother, Annie, Marion, Fanny, and Bunny of Grandma's children there at the house. And there was me, my brother Bob. Um, at first, it was just us. And then there was um, Anne was born there. And who else? Warren, Anne and Warren, and then a Noonie, and Mildred, Libby.
Yes. Nicknames.
She hate that name Mildred. I don't know why. And that was it.
Mm-hmm.
At the time when we were young,
And so you're living in this house, and was there electricity or plumbing inside the house?
I think we were the only people in the neighborhood that had a flushing outside toilet.
Outside but flushing.
And We had an outside toilet that flushed, and it was attached. It was attached to the back of the kitchen.
Hmm.
I don't know how that.
Well, that's progress.
Yeah, it was.
But no electricity?
We had no electricity. We had kerosene lamps, and we bought the kerosene from Webb's store, and those lamps. The I don't know how we did it, but I remember when after everybody was in school, we used to sit at the kitchen table with the lamp in the middle, and we all did our homework, and we saw fine with those kerosene lamps. Now, of course, they don't give enough light. We really can't see with them.
Hmm. Now you have all kind of light, huh?
Hmm.
Okay.
But uh, it was good.
Hmm. And so it seems like you have a number of siblings and cousins in the household, so there's a lot of activity there.
Yeah, it
Um,
was.
what kind of games did you play?
We shot marbles, we jumped rope, we played ball it, with a broomstick and a tennis ball. But we had our ball.
You had a big yard?
We had fun.
Hmm. Hmm.
We had we had fun. I remember one time my mother was playing ball with us uh, out in front of the house in the road, and her friend Tootsie, cousin Tootsie, it came. Anna, what are you doing out here playing ball? She said, I'm having a game with my children. Do you mind?
Did she join in? Did she join in, Miss Tootsie? Did she join in the game?
No, she was a pitcher. I don't ever remember seeing her bat, but I know she was the pitcher.
Hmm.
Mm. And we played hide and seek, of course, and we just had fun.
Being kids.
Nobody worried about where we were during the day because we knew we were either in the alley or we were up on Carolina Street or Church Street. On and so they if they called us, we could hear them,
Hmm.
and we made sure that we made it back home when we heard them calling. Um, I I don't know what else to tell you about that,
Well, I'm
but
sure.
I know it. We had fun.
Hmm.
We didn't sit in the house and well, there wasn't anything like a video game, but we had a lot of music in the house.
And music, how did
Music. We had a
radio,
Victrola,
record player?
a Victrola. You call it what you will,
Uh-huh.
but for us it was a Victrola. It was about almost 5 feet tall. It stood on the floor, and we had a lot of records because wherever Maud and George went, when they came back home, they always had these records, and we had a lot of them from from different places with the old time uh, black performers because we couldn't get them in orange. Even if we had money to buy them, which we most likely didn't. You know, but and and the Victrola, we had to wind that up.
Hmm.
And halfway through the record, it would stop. We had to wind it up again. And we had needles that we had to put in, and but it was fun.
Hmm.
And as I said, we had a lot of music, all kinds of music.
Standing now, you are the oldest grandchild.
Hmm.
And so, were you considered a leader of the group, or
No,
who?
I was always the quiet one.
So, who is that one in the house who took control and led everybody around?
Marion for one,
Hmm.
Marion and Fanny.
Okay, more outgoing personalities, huh?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Okay.
Me, I was just one of the kids.
Hmm.
Um, the only thing, well, I had a job. I had to comb Noonie and Lobby's hair,
Okay.
and I didn't like it. So I would sit them on the porch, on the steps in front of me, and I would braid their hair. You know, my mother told me to do it, so I had to do it.
Hmm.
You didn't tell them that you weren't going to do anything.
Hmm.
If they said you do this, you did it. And uh, Marion, uh, well, everybody else worked except her, so she stayed at home and took care of us.
Hmm.
And although she wasn't that much older than me, I had to do what she said because she was our babysitter. Although we didn't like it, you know, but we had to do what she said. And Papa, Grandma Johnson's husband, I really don't remember too much about Papa, but I remember that he was short. He was a little short man, and when he when he felt the need for punishing us, he did it. But I think that he did it reluctantly because he didn't look like he enjoyed it. But I I remember one time he whipped me and Fanny and Bunny because we got up one morning and took a watermelon from his little patch that he had in the garden, we called it. This was just a strip of land between where we lived and where these other people lived. It was Miss Sally Ellis and her husband lived next door to us on one side. And there was a strip of land there, and at one end of it, Papa had a chicken coop, and at the other end, he had a vegetable garden. Oh, and he had one little patch from where he grew watermelon. And one morning, Fanny, Bunny, and I got up and we went out. This was during the summer, during school vacation. We got up, we took a watermelon and just smashed it on the ground and ate what we wanted, and then left the rest of it there. And Papa beat our behinds because he said we shouldn't. We were wasting it.
Sounds like a good reason to get
You
a
you know
beating.
you know your mother made pickles with those rinds, and you were wasting it. He tore us up.
So I suppose you didn't do that again, huh?
Mhm.
You didn't do that again, right?
No, no, no. And to this day, I don't even like watermelon. I don't even like the smell of it.
Mm, okay,
Mm.
okay. So Mabel, you're a little kid. You're in the alley. You got all these siblings and cousins around you. But Who is that friend outside the house that you became close to?
Betty Ellis.
A neighbor?
Uh, Betty and I, see, my mother and Tootsie were very good friends. My mother had me and Bob. Tootsie had Betty and Billy. And Betty and I were the same age. Bob and Billy were the same age. So we were good friends, and Betty and I were closer than any of anybody else that lived around us. But there were others, the Carpenters, um, and mm, they had. I remember they had three or four daughters and two sons. I remember them, but they were older than us.
Hmm.
They were like, one of the boys was Fanny's age, and the other one was like Marion's age. So they didn't bother us too much.
Hmm. But Betty was your friend.
Betty and I were good friends, and we remained good friends.
Hmm.
Wherever, even when I moved away, Betty and I always kept in touch with each other. Betty, Ruth Scott, and I,
Hmm.
and Ruth, although she didn't live in the alley, the Carpenters were her cousins because Miss Nellie Carpenter and Ruth's mother, Miss Joseph Scott, were sisters. And so Betty would come, Ruth would come to visit her cousins, and then she'd walk on down the road and come to our house, like everyone did.
Hmm.
We had more people at our house than anybody else in that alley.
So we
We
are.
always had a house full, a
Hmm.
porch full,
Hmm. Okay.
which the porch started out like a 2x4, and then when my brother got a little older, he expanded the porch. He and Billy, and I don't know who else helped him, but they made a porch that extended the whole width of the house.
Mm.
And where he got the columns, I don't know. But Bob went and got some columns and put them on that porch. We had a mansion.
Hmm. Okay. Very resourceful guys, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And
You
so,
know,
Mabel, tell me about church. What was church like for you? What exposure did you have to religion?
we went to we most of us went to Nazareth. Um, and Gertrude's children went to Emmanuel, but it didn't matter because everybody went to. I mean, like, we were members of Nazareth, they were members of Emmanuel, but everybody went to each church, whatever was going on, and we only had services twice a month at each one. Nazareth had first and third, Emmanuel had second and fourth, and this stayed like that for years. And whenever Nazareth was having anything, Emmanuel wouldn't, and it worked the same way for Emmanuel. If Emmanuel was having a service, uh, wasn't anything scheduled at Nazareth, which made it all right, because and there were um, a lot of people going to either church.
Hmm.
The churches were always full.
Hmm.
But I know on Wednesday night at Nazareth, anyhow, I don't remember whether it was like that on at Emmanuel, but on Wednesday there was prayer meeting at Nazareth every Wednesday night, and we went. We didn't have a choice because Uncle Ben, who was Aunt Nellie's husband, would come by the house, and he would say to my grandmother, "Oh, Celia, you don't feel like going to church tonight? That's all right. I'll take the children." And we would be in the background. Uncle Ben, why don't you go home? But he would take us, and well, we had to do what he said, of course, you know. But we would always we try to sit in the back, and he would make us come up front. But and it was nice. I can still see the deacons sitting in Nazareth where the choir stand is now. That's where the deacons all sat, and I can remember some of those deacons so well, and some of the older ladies in the church, like mm, uh, cousin lady we called her. Her name was Lizzie Robinson. That was Toots's mother, Toots's aunt, uh, and Miss Lily Cooper, and my grandmother Hattie Smith,
Hmm.
and oh wow, and Miss Joseph uh, Joseph Scott played the piano for the choirs, and of course there was always full of
Hmm.
Sneeds and Robinsons, and I can't call all of them,
Hmm.
but church. And I remember when Reverend Stanton first came to Nazareth, 1939. I was 9 years old. I think it was then. I was in one of his first baptismal groups. He baptized me when I was 9 years old.
Mm. Legendary preacher.
Hmm.
Legendary preacher for a local church. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So Miss Easton, so now you're coming of age and it's time for school. Uh, where did you go to school?
Orange grade.
The school right next door.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what was that like?
What was it like?
Yes, ma'am.
I loved it.
Mm.
I sincerely loved school. Didn't want to miss a day. And it's funny. When I started school, I could read, and I don't know how I learned to read. But I can remember that when I started school, because I couldn't see
Hmm.
for one thing, and I didn't start school until I was 8,
Okay.
and I stayed in. Nowadays it's kindergarten, but then it was primer. I stayed in there one week. I stayed in first grade 2 weeks, and then in third grade I maybe a month, and then I got to the fourth grade. I caught up with the rest of them.
That's amazing. Hmm.
But I could actually read, and my first teacher was Miss Dotson, and she asked me how did I learn to read. I told her I don't know, and I didn't. I really didn't know how I learned to read, but I can remember. that I used to sit at the kitchen table, and there was anything on the table that had writing on it, I could read it. I say it was a gift from God,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
although I never articulated it that way. But I could really read
And you had a favorite subject?
when I was in school.
Yes.
Mm, not really. I liked everything except math.
Nothing special there, huh?
No,
Yeah. Okay.
I history and geography. I think I liked them better than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
This is when I was going to Orange Grady.
Mm-hmm. And so, how long did you go to this school?
Until I graduated in seventh grade.
And that was
We
the
had
end at that
we
time.
we had our seventh grade graduation,
Mm-hmm.
and then we went to Lightfoot.
Okay.
I went to Lightfoot for 1 year, one semester,
Mm-hmm.
and uh, and then when school closed in June and July, I went to New Jersey. So I went to high school here one time.
And why did this happen?
Why
What?
did I go?
Yes, ma'am.
For one thing, my mother was there,
Mm-hmm.
and Grandma Johnson told me, she said, "You're going to New Jersey with your mother."
Mm-hmm.
And so she fixed me a box lunch. At that time, everybody had, it was segregated cars, and everybody in that segregated car had a box lunch. You had a shoebox, and you had food in that shoebox. And she put me on a train with Viri. You remember Viri?
Mr. Dan's wife?
Yeah.
Yes.
Viri had been in Orange. She was getting ready to go back to D.C. So Grandma put me on a train with her and asked her if she would put me on the right train to go to for New Jersey. And she said, "Of course, Miss Johnson." And so she did. She put me on the right train, and I went to New Jersey. But being 13 years old, never been away from home before, it mm, when we got to Newark, I didn't know I was supposed to get off. I went to New York.
Oh, you went straight to the big time, huh? To Broadway.
No, I got off, and I stayed in the station, and at, at least I had phone numbers. So I was calling Selena. I know she worked at Alexander Hamilton Hotel, and I was calling her, to come get me. And she didn't have a car. I don't know how I thought she was coming to get me. But Uncle George came and got me. He and Moore came and got me. I I heard them paging me, and I didn't answer the page. Dumb bunny, me, you know.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's probably quite a shock now.
Yeah,
It's
it
your first
was.
trip out of Orange and you're stuck in New
Uh-huh.
York. Okay.
Well, where are you? I said, I'm in the train station. Where? Because we paged you in Newark and you weren't there. I, s- I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
that when the conductor came by and he pulled that little ticket from off your seat, you were supposed to get off when the train stopped.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So
Okay. But you eventually made it to New Jersey safely.
yeah,
Okay.
hmm and I really didn't like it,
Mm-hmm.
and I did not like going to New Jersey. I wanted to stay in Orange,
Is that
but
because of your friends or because of the city life or what was
why
the
didn't
reason?
I like New Jersey?
Yes.
I didn't know anybody there. And the only people I knew were my aunts,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and they were grown.
Mm-hmm.
I knew no, there weren't any relatives my age there, you know. So I really didn't like it.
Mm-hmm.
But then after a while, I got to accept it. But before that, my mother registered me in school, Eastside High School. And I was, well, here I would have been going into the ninth grade because that would have been second year high school. But up there, second year high school was 10th grade because elementary school actually was went to eighth grade. Ninth grade was freshman.
Mm-hmm.
But here was,
A different standard.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
hmm And everybody kept telling me they're going to put you back. They're going to put you back. But they didn't. They put me in my right grade.
And so they did. Now, how did you perform in this school system?
I think I did all right.
Mm-hmm.
I I stayed on the honor roll,
Well, I'd say you did all right.
but except for one time, one marking period actually, and it was I got a D in English. Teacher name was Mr. Diamond, and he told me, he said, he gave me a 95 U. The U was unsatisfactory. And he told me, he said, I gave you the 95 because you earned it. I gave you the U because you didn't even try.
Interesting.
Which didn't make sense to me,
Mm-hmm.
you know, but it kept me off the honor roll.
Yeah, I guess he's saying you have more potential in his way.
Well, he didn't explain that to me.
Mm-hmm.
But after I got in school and I got to know a lot of girls that lived uh, where we lived. We lived on Graham Avenue,
Mm-hmm.
across the street from Bragg's Funeral Home,
Okay. Okay.
and so there were a lot of girls my age that I got to know as I got in school, and uh, and there was uh, the apartment house that was on Hamilton Avenue, across from us. There was this one a Jewish girl that lived in that apartment house, and she and I used to talk back and forth, and we had to talk kind of loud, because she's on one side of the street and I'm on the other side. But it was okay,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
And so, what time was this in history? What year was this? What?
44. 44,
Okay.
44. This
So now,
the second day that I was in East Side, I met this girl from Virginia. Her name was Viola Lucabelle.
okay.
And she told me, she said, "You know what, Mabel, I know how you feel because when I came to Paterson, I went to school at school number 6, which was right up the street from where we lived, you know." And she said, and I had never been in school with colored kids, so I, it scared me to death. I said, so she said, "I know exactly how you feel."
Hmm.
And she and I became very good
Two
friends.
Virginia girls
Yeah.
from the other side, each side of the track. Huh?
Mm-hmm.
That's good.
Yeah.
Okay. But you made it through high school. You did okay. You graduated from high school?
Yeah, I graduated from East Side
East Side
in
High School.
1948.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. High school. You're in the city now, which means I assume you're going to make a life here in the city. What was your social life like outside of school?
Outside of, well, there were a lot of theaters in Paterson. There was about 7 theaters in
Mm,
Paterson. We went to the movies a lot.
mm,
On weekends, we had the YWCA,
mm-hmm.
and we had dances there. On um, Saturdays, Sundays, of course, everybody went to church, and after church on Sunday, we could do whatever, you know, for certain hours, you know. And we would go to the Savoy. We'd catch a bus and go to New York or catch the ferry
As
and
teenagers.
uh, and go to New York to the Savoy and dance.
So now here you are, little
Mm,
country girl from Virginia. You
yeah.
moved to New Jersey. Now you're in New York at the Savoy, legendary place. So how did the bright lights of New York strike you at that age?
Well, it was fine because mostly we were there during daylight hours.
Mm.
We weren't when we'd get out of church and we'd go over there and we'd go to the Savoy. We had to be out of there by 6 o'clock because no teenagers were allowed in there
Mm.
after 6. And and that was fine with us, you know. We had been there and we had listened to the live music and and all that, you know. And we would go to the Apollo, and
That sounds
mm,
like fun.
yeah,
Mhm.
we used to have a good time.
So if you think about this live entertainment, um, do you have any great memories of legendary entertainers?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, Billy Eckstein, Brooke Benton. Y'all don't know
Crooners.
who they
Crooners.
are.
Oh, I
Yeah.
know.
Mm-hmm. Um, I don't, there were so many, because most of the mo- Butterbeans and Susie, I remember them from the Apollo,
Hmm. Comedy act. Yeah. Hmm.
and mm, you know, when you get 89 years old, your memory get a little fuzzy.
I understand. So I understand. And that's okay. But the main thing is that I guess the big difference is that you're physically in New York and it's live entertainment, and
Hmm.
it's a little bit different than the
Yeah.
country life.
I know one thing. The first time I ever seen a drug addict was in New York, and we didn't even know what was wrong with the man. We were going to the Savoy. We were on 125th Street, and this man was crouched down on the street. And as we approached him, he kept saying, "Get back, get back! You're gonna fall in. You're gonna fall in." And we didn't know what he was talking about, you know. And this cop walked up to us, and he said, "Kids," he said, "don't pay attention to what he's saying. He think that that little crack in the sidewalk is a big hole." And we said, "Well, why would he think that?" And the cop said, "Because he's on drugs, and everything is magnified." First time I ever saw anybody on drugs.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
that might have been a deterrent. I never tried them, so,
Hmm.
you know.
Okay. So,
But
Mabel, now you're a nice young lady. You're a teenager now. You're in the city. Tell me about men. Did you find any
I
young
had
beaux?
boyfriends.
Okay,
You know, I was never good looking, but I was always attractive.
that's interesting.
And
Uh,
that's the way. That's the way I looked at me.
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I know I was never attractive, but I knew how to put my clothes together,
Mm-hmm.
and I had a nice shape.
Mm-hmm.
Not as good as some people, but I thought I was pretty good.
Enough for the beaux to speak to you, right?
So
And
you know,
okay, okay. And so, did any in particular stay around? Did you fall in love? Did you
when you know when you're when you're young, you can fall in love just like that, you know, and fall out of love the
just
same
like that?
way, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there were guys.
Mm-hmm. So tell me about
Yeah.
this guy, Mr. Richard Easton. Where did he come into the
Why did
picture at?
you really want to know about him? Well, anyway,
We can not talk about him if you like. If you like, we can move on. So tell me about.
Richard
Oh,
was all right at first.
mm-hmm.
You know, actually, I met him through my aunt Selena
Mm-hmm.
because Selena and my father and people that lived in the same building where my father lived, they all worked at Alexander Hamilton Hotel. And Aunt Laura, well, actually, she was Richard's aunt. They all worked at the
Okay.
hotel,
Mm-hmm.
and Richard's mother had uh, had married this man from Bermuda. He never became an American citizen, but and he had trouble finding a job here, so then he went back to Bermuda. She went back with him and left Richard with Aunt Laura.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so basically Aunt Laura raised him.
Mm-hmm.
You know, him and her daughter Irene. You know, and my kids call her cousin Irene.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he that's how I met Richard. And, well, eventually we got married.
Hmm. Okay. Okay. So Mabel,
And
children.
had these babies.
How many children did you have?
I had 6 children.
Hmm.
One died when she was 7 months old.
Okay.
Actually, she, this child that lived up the street from us, used to walk past every day and was trying to pick her up out of the carriage. And I would tell her no. But one day she sneaked in the house and went upstairs, and Lauren was in the crib. She picked her up out of the crib and she dropped her.
Oh. Okay.
I didn't even know that she was in the house.
Hmm.
I was I was in the kitchen and I was ironing, and she went upstairs, and when she after she dropped her, she ran home and she told her mother that Miss Mabel's baby has blood in her eyes.
Hmm.
That's what she told her mother.
Hmm.
And her mother came down and she said, Mabel, as far as I know, she's upstairs taking a nap. And she said, let's go check. And when I went upstairs and I picked her up out of the crib, and she took one breath, and that was it.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
and we called the ambulance and whatever. But
Hmm.
she had died. And this child, I don't know what she thought that I was going to do to her, but she had to pass by my house in order to get to school. And she would get right there at the corner and take off running,
Hmm.
until finally one day I just caught her and I told her, honey, I'm not going to do anything to you because what you did was not intentional,
Hmm.
you know.
She's a child.
Yeah,
Hmm.
she was 6,
Oh.
something like
So
that.
she had to carry this burden for who
Mm-hmm.
knows how long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you're not going to believe this. Her sister is married to Stephanie's son.
You're right. That is a little
Mm-hmm.
interestingly.
Yeah.
Mm. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so you had other children.
Yeah.
And your oldest, who's your oldest child?
Jackie.
Jackie. And how old is she?
Jackie. How old is she
Yes.
now?
Yes.
70.
70 years old.
Uh-huh.
Hmm.
Jackie is the oldest, and then Michael, then Stephanie. Lauren was after Stephanie, and then Janet and Kevin.
Kevin. Okay. The
Hmm.
Eastons.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now I have Jackie and Stephanie.
Hmm.
That's it.
Hmm. But you have a number of grandchildren and
Oh,
great
wow.
grandchildren.
I have 17 grandchildren.
Hmm.
And last count, I had 20. I had 26 great grandchildren. And I have, as far as I know, I have 7 great, great. Yeah, I guess they're great.
Wow. Well,
Yeah.
that's quite a number of children
Yes, it is
for a little
that.
country girl from Orange.
Yeah, how about that? Oh, I had a lot of jobs
Hmm.
after Richard and I broke up. Because when we broke up, I was in Orange. I came to Orange, well, he and I had gone to a New Year's party with at one of his friends' house, and he was acting up. I had to go to the bathroom, and when I went to the bathroom, he was in the bedroom with this woman. I came out the bathroom, called me a taxi, and went home.
Okay.
And when he came home, I told him, I said, you need to straighten up. And if you don't, I'm leaving. I said, I'll give you 6 months to get your act together. Evidently, well, I don't know whether he ever got it together or not. But school closed. This was at a New Year's party
Hmm.
that we had gone to, and when I had Jackie was had just started school, and I told him I was coming to Orange. I'd be back at the end of August, in time for her to go to school,
Hmm.
go back to school. And so I had been here about 2 weeks, and he called and said, "I want you to come home because I know you're not doing nothing but down there running around." I told him I'll be home in August, like I said. In the next 2 weeks, he was here. He came here.
Came to get his woman.
He didn't say that, but
Hmm.
anyway, he uh, uh he got here on Saturday morning, and we were all at my mother's house. This is when they lived on Caroline Street in Miss Clara's house,
Hmm.
and Noonie was doing hair as usual. That's all she did on Saturday. She had more customers than the
Beauty parlor.
than the beauticians. House full, and had the television on, and Capital Caravan was on, and she Mabel, let's see you and Arthur dance off that. I don't even remember what the record was. Anyway, after we finished dancing, Richard caught me by the arm and dragged me in the kitchen. You ought to be ashamed of yourself flirting with that young boy. I said, all I was doing was dancing. I said, besides, I said, those are my sister's friends. And it was. They were all the ones that were sitting around doing nothing.
Hmm.
Those are all Noonan and Lobby's friends and cousins. Because, Ann was there. Ann was always there,
Hmm.
you know. Ann and Alice, although Alice didn't talk. And uh, he hit me
Mm.
and knocked me under the sink in the kitchen. And there was a little carton of Pepsi Cola bottles, and I just picked up one of those bottles and hit him in the head with it,
Okay.
and the blood started running. He ran out the house and up the street to Dr. Phillips, and then Betty came down. Mabel, what happened to Richard? I saw him running in the doctor's office. I tried to say he hit me, and I hit him back. And so uh, Richard got had Dr. Phillips 6 or 7 stitches in his head, and he came back, threw his little stuff in his bag, and took off
Hmm.
to catch the train back to New Jersey.
Okay.
And as soon as uh, Buster, my stepfather, came home, and Buster, Buster, Mabel and Richard were fighting in here. And Buster had had a couple drinks, and he said, "What? That Granny Dodger fighting in my house?" He got his shotgun,
Mm.
and he was going downtown and
Looking for
shoot
your husband,
Richard.
looking for Richard.
But just as he got down there, the train came. Thank God for that. There wasn't no point in them going to jail for that.
Hmm.
And then and Richard went on back to Paterson, and I stayed here.
Hmm.
I stayed here for 3 years.
Oh, really?
Hmm.
Okay. Okay.
And then I
Hmm.
went back to Paterson. I got tired of working for these people.
You had to do domestic work when you were here.
I was working for the Samuels,
Hmm.
and I, I I got tired of taking care of their babies, and then had to go home and take care of my own.
Hmm.
So
Okay. So when you were back in New Jersey, now you have this family. So you go to work. Work did you do?
at first, I worked in a factory.
Hmm.
I worked in a laundry. I, I did all kinds of things,
Hmm.
but and then they had uh, before I got the job at Prudential, Kevin, because where we lived, we didn't have uh, we really didn't have a, a a bathroom per se. There was no tub in the bathroom.
Hmm.
You know, we took a bath and we had to heat water to take a bath. You know, and uh, Kevin, being the youngest, always had his bath first, and I had done I have done some of the dumbest things, and this was dumb. I put the hot water in the tub first, and Kevin walking with the dog. My kids always had a dog or a cat or something around. Kevin had the dog on a leash, walking backward into the kitchen where the tub was. And before anybody could grab him, he fell over in that hot water and got scalded.
Hmm.
And anyway, he uh, he was in hospital for quite a while,
Hmm.
you know. But I can remember him telling the doctor, "Oh, I gotta pee. I gotta pee." And the doctor gave him a urinal. He said, "I ain't peeing in that bottle."
Mm.
And my name is not Butch. And that was the doctor was calling him Butch. He said, my name is not Butch, and I ain't peeing in that bottle." And and he's yelling, "Mabel, Mabel." He called me because he thought it was funny. Because I used to yell at him and tell him, "Look, you don't call me Mabel. My name is Mommy." You know. He said, "Turkey call you Mabel." I said, "Yeah, but Turkey's my brother."
But they were closer to the same age, though.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But anyway, uh, as I said, while he was in the hospital, I was working. I was working in a factory, and uh, they would let me off instead of taking my regular lunch out, I would have lunch and go to the hospital to see him. And the day when they told him that they gave him a time, gave me a time when he could come home, and then they got social services at the hospital called my job and told the man that uh, I would have to stay at home.
Oh, to care for him. Hmm.
And they told me, and I said, well, but that doesn't make sense. I said, I have a very reliable babysitter who lived next door. And she did. We lived on 16th Avenue. It was like a double house,
Hmm.
duplex, you would call it now, I guess.
Yeah.
But Mary Helen was her name. And she used to babysit for me. And she said, no, you're the parent. You need to learn how to take care of him yourself. I said, well, she'll come to the hospital. You can show her what to do or tell her what. No, that was not acceptable. So I said, I can't quit my job. I have four other children to take care of. They didn't even want to hear. I go back to work, you know, and he'd tell me that I'm sorry, but I have to fire you.
Mm.
I go, why you want to fire me? Am I doing something wrong or whatever? I was giving the man a stiff argument, and I don't argue, you know. And anyway, he gave me severance pay, I guess you'd call it, and laid me off or
Hmm.
fired me, whatever,
Yeah.
you know. But and after that, I was on welfare for a while,
Hmm. Hmm.
and I didn't like that either because they were asking me to come down to the welfare office. I'm not going. And I think they wrote to Annie, and I don't know what they said to her because she never said to me. I know the only thing I know is she got a letter from New Jersey from the welfare office, and anyway, I said I wasn't going down there because I don't want to be on welfare.
Hmm.
Woman came to my house, signed me up anyhow. At first, I wouldn't let her in, you know, but I did eventually. And then when Kevin got well enough and he started school, this is not working,
Hmm.
you know. So I went. And they had this program in Paterson, you know, where they teach you whatever. I went and took some courses, and then I got a job. So I went to right across the street from the Fabian. They had this business employment agency. So I went in there, and the, they were asking me questions. Could I type? Could I do steno and all that? And I said yes, you know. And she said, would you, uh, do you drive? I said no. Would you like to go for an interview at Prudential Insurance? I said, yes. She said, do you think you could go today? I said, yes. So she told me where it was on Totowa Avenue. And I caught the bus and I went up there. And they interviewed me, gave me to do what you have to do.
Hmm.
And
He could see the potential in you. And,
so,
yeah. He could see the value as an employee.
so
Yeah.
anyway, oh, he said, all right, we'll give you a call. And so this was, I went home and called the laundry and told them, I said, I'm sorry, I can't come to work for you tomorrow because I have another job. They didn't tell me that I had been hired at Prudential. You know, this was just me said I because I just felt like they were going to hire me.
Hmm.
But then when I went there, anyway, uh, the next day, the manager from Prudential called me and he asked me because at that time everybody who worked for the insurance company had to go take a physical,
Hmm.
regardless of whether you were an agent or part of the office staff or whatever. So I said, yeah, where do you want me? He said, he named the doctor, Dr. Curtis. And he he came and got me and took me to the doctor and waited and brought me back home. And he said, see you Monday.
Hmm.
And then that Monday, when I went there, the office manager, whose name was Marvel said, well, the job is only temporary. He said, we can hire you on a temporary, you'll be a full-time temp
Hmm.
for a year because the one that you're replacing is out on disability. So I said, okay. And I figured about, when the year is up, then I'll get something else. But I worked for Prudential for 22 years. They hired me as a temp,
And you stayed 22 years.
but I worked for them for 22 years and enjoyed every minute of it.
Hmm. Hmm.
Although there were some people that I didn't get along with too well at first, but it worked out.
So patience is a virtue then, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
Well, Miss Easton, so it looks like now you've come through your work life. You have found yourself in a position where you retire from your work, you move back to Orange. And so, how did it feel moving back to Orange?
Like I had never left.
Really?
I I honestly loved Orange. And I used to come as often as I could,
Hmm.
you know, because like I said, I didn't want to leave to begin with, you know, but I had no choice.
Hmm.
And then the later years, you know, my my children had started having children. Actually, all of my children, grandchildren, actually, were grown,
Hmm.
except for two. I only had two minor children, you know, two minor grandchildren, and I said, I'm retiring, and I'm leaving. I'm going back home, because then the great grandchildren had started coming,
Yes.
you know, and with 17 grandchildren, and then these great grandchildren are coming. It's time to go.
Hmm.
So I told her, I'm moving, I'm retiring, and I'm going back home to live. And of course, my aunts, why do you want to go back to Orange to live? Uh, Orange is home, you know. I really don't want to stay in Patterson because Patterson has started changing. And I really didn't know. I didn't want to stay there.
Hmm.
And so I came back. And Noonie called me and told me that Purcell had decided that he didn't want this house. So I said, well, find out how much you want for it and let me know. I said, if I can get it, I said, I'll buy the house. So she said, okay. He said, I'll ask her. And then Angie called me and she and I talked. And okay, I think I can handle that. So I took my retirement money and I bought the house.
Hmm.
And I'm glad I bought it and paid for it so I wouldn't have a mortgage,
That's wonderful. I think
because
that's wonderful.
I, huh,
I think that's wonderful.
I, I am happy that I didn't have a mortgage, that I don't have a mortgage, because if I had if I had a mortgage to pay every month, I'd be outdoors.
Mm.
So anyway,
So
and
now,
so
so you've been here some years now,
I've
and
been here 30 years.
30 years, and you find yourself now aging gracefully. You have a whole bunch of people underneath your wing now, and you're no longer the oldest grandchild down in the alley or at Marshall Heights. And so, if you have to think about the then and now and how far you've come, what are some of the more important things you've learned over the course of time
That I what
that you've learned over the course of time?
For one thing, I've learned how to get along with other people. I think I am more educated now than I was when I came out of high school. And I think that's because I read a lot. I love books. I've always loved books. As you can see,
Hmm.
that's just part of me. I, um, I have grown closer to God because there was a time when I left the church, you know, because the pastor at the church in Paterson told me he didn't have time to talk to me. He didn't. See, you know Jackie as she is now. But when Jackie was a teenager, she gave me a hard time.
Hmm.
And I I always thought that you have a problem, go to your clergy and ask them, for help. And I had asked Reverend Curran, uh, could I could my daughter and I come and talk to you one day? Talk to you. I didn't say one day. He said, I'm sorry, Mabel, I don't have time. And he had known me since I was 15.
Hmm.
Because that's when I joined Calvary. And he said, I'm sorry, I don't have time. I said, I don't mean today. I said, at your convenience. I just want to talk to you. And maybe you can help, you know. He said, I'm sorry, I don't have time. So I stopped going to Calvary.
Hmm.
I didn't stop going to church. I just stopped going to him. To Calvary. And my aunts couldn't understand why I stopped going, you know. And when I told them, they didn't believe me. That Reverend Kern would tell you he didn't have time for you. I said, well, he told me that. What was I supposed to say? And so anyway, since I've been back here, I I have a whole another attitude toward church. And in fact, I enjoy going to church. I love uh, I love Bible study and Sunday school. And when I taught Sunday school, those were happy days for me. I don't know how it was for the kids, but I remember your son telling me uh, when he was a little boy and before he got baptized, he said, "I'll get baptized at Emmanuel, but I'm still going to come to Sunday school over here."
And he did.
Yes, he did.
And he did.
Until all the other kids stopped coming, and he was the only one left. And then he said, Mabel, I think I'm going to go to Sunday school at Emmanuel because there are other children there." Oh, okay. All right, Chris.
But it
Yeah.
wasn't because of the teacher.
Evidently not.
No.
Because I got along with the kids.
Hmm.
I still like those kids. I love them. Although they're not kids anymore. They're all grown.
Hmm.
You know. And
Okay.